Katie is going to tell us a little bit about the ICC and cleanups in general, and then we're just going to open it up and discuss until everybody has to go, or okay. We'll say 4:15.
All right. Am I on mute still?
Nope.
You can hear me. Good. All right. Well, I'll go fast, but I hope share a lot of information about removing debris, litter, plastic pollution, and what's going on this fall. Okay. So there are many, many different cleanups that go on throughout the state of Virginia. Some are year-round, like Adopt a Highway. Some are through Adopt a Stream. Adopt a Stream is no longer funded on the state level by the state government, but many local governments still run Adopt a Stream programs where streams are cleaned either monthly or quarterly. There's many friend groups like Friends of the Rappahannock and many friend groups that do cleanups, and some of those are year-round. There are many regional cleanups. Just last weekend we had the James River regional cleanup, and the Potomac River has a regional cleanup. The Mattapony and Pamunkey Rivers do too. And then there are statewide efforts like Adopt a Highway. At the state level cleanup I'm going to talk mostly about is the International Coastal Cleanup in Virginia. The International Coastal Cleanup is organized worldwide by the Ocean Conservancy. This is their 35th year of organizing it. And here in the state of Virginia, it's organized by Clean Virginia Waterways of Longwood University, where I work. And this is our 26th year of organizing it. We love it because the benefits are both short-term and long-term. By short-term, I mean the amount of litter and plastic that is removed from the environment, whether it's a cleanup on a sidewalk, a road, a beach. So we're not just talking about water-based cleanups, but the short-term benefit is, of course, removing this debris. Last year, the International Coastal Cleanup worldwide, the volunteers removed 20.8 million pounds. And here in Virginia, our volunteers collected 137,000 pounds. And our volunteers also collect data, which we've talked about. We use the Ocean Conservancy's paper data form, as well as the Clean Swell app. And the data all go into an international database, which is open to the public. Anybody can go and look at the data collected by volunteers. And I'd say about 50 to 60% of the volunteers in the International Coastal Cleanup in Virginia actually collect data. Others give us just how many volunteers and how many pounds, but others actually do the data. This is just a snapshot since 1995 when we started. We've had over 116,000 volunteers remove almost 5 million pounds. In fact, this year, some lucky volunteer is going to pick up a piece of litter that will represent the 5 millionth pound picked up in Virginia. So the data, yay, might be you. So here's a table that shows how, one of the ways we use the data is to take a look at top 10 items. In the first column, we've got top 10 items found nationwide or worldwide on the planet Earth. The middle column is the USA, and then on the right, Virginia data. And you notice that on the Earth, the #1 item found this last year was food wrappers, which are mostly plastic. And this was the first time in 34 years that cigarette butts were not on the #1 slot internationally, worldwide. But you see cigarette butts are still #1 in the US and in Virginia. And just looking at the Virginia list, you see almost that entire top 10 list is made up of waste from what we eat and what we drink. It's almost all single-use packaging for food and beverage. If we could eliminate mismanagement of those items, the top 10 lists would look very, very different. But you'll also notice that the items on all 3 of these lists are very similar. They might be in different ranked order, there's slight differences, but basically this is about what we smoke and what we eat and what we drink. You might have also seen recently some media coverage about the fact that plastic food packaging now surpassed cigarette butts. And that's another important thing about cleanups, is raising awareness through the media. And it's also very educational. I don't know anyone who's participated in a cleanup who hasn't asked questions. Like those of you in the Valley, I'm going to call you guys the Valley Boys. You've talked about where are the tires coming from that you're finding, and what can be done about that? What are the sources? There are schools that use cleanups as part of their discussions on watersheds and how watersheds function and how things move through a watershed. There's also ways to use the data to look at local concerns, local issues. Here are two pictures taken of children's beach toys left on beaches in Virginia. And so this is a local issue for those beaches. And these issues that are identified by the data can then lead to solutions. Some communities have these take a toy, leave a toy boxes to get these plastic toys off the beach. We were going to implement this in Virginia Beach this summer, but then COVID happened. So hopefully we'll do that in the future. Other trends that we have noticed over the years because of the data collected by volunteers. In the early days of the cleanups, volunteers were finding lots of glass bottles, metal cans, paper bags, and other items similar to that, but they have been increasingly replaced by plastic alternatives. So if you look at the data since 30 years ago, you see this shift towards more single-use plastics. Other ways that we use the data, as was mentioned earlier, the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan was informed in great part by data collected by volunteers. It helped determine what the priorities were going to be for that plan. The data are also used with policies. For example, because of data collected by volunteers, every state park in Virginia has a policy against against balloons, helium-filled balloons, and also sky lanterns. That was not a specific policy before, but again, data informed that. And then laws. Every year we get lots of correspondence from legislators and their staff wanting data. They want the hard numbers in order to understand how to craft legal solutions to some of these plastic pollution problems. And then finally, the data can help inform the development of behavior change campaigns, including one that was mentioned earlier by Virginia Whitmer of the Coastal Zone Management Program, campaign to decrease people who intentionally release balloons into the environment. So cleanups this fall are going to be looking different. As already has been mentioned, smaller cleanups in order to have social distancing. For example, Saturday, I led a cleanup in Richmond that usually has about 80 or so volunteers. But this year we had 48 volunteers. We timed them to arrive at different times, so we didn't have all of them at the registration desk at the same time. And then we staggered their end time. And then we sent them geographically in different areas so that we could maintain social distancing. We also had, of course, gloves, hand sanitizer, pickup grabber tools, which also help. So that's one way that the cleanups are different this year. But I've also noticed that there's an increase in the number of cleanups this year. Scouts, especially, we've had a lot of Boy Scout troops find that, with sports being canceled in the schools, with overnight camping trips being canceled because of COVID, they're looking for meaningful, hands-on, outdoor, socially distancing options, and cleanups fit the bill. We've also had a lot more homeowner associations doing cleanups as well as families. So it's kind of a do-it-yourself cleanup this year. People can download a data card or use the smartphone app to collect data. So it's interesting. We're having more cleanups, but they are smaller. I also wanted to point out that the International Coastal Cleanup is held every September and October. That's been the way it's been for 35 years. But this year, Project Clean Stream, which is a program of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, they used to be, they're always in the spring, but they moved this year to the fall because of COVID. And now they're working very closely with Clean Virginia Waterways so that we can work together to increase cleanups throughout the Chesapeake Bay portion of Virginia. Also, the Great American Cleanup, which is organized throughout the US by Clean or Keep America Beautiful, they also shifted to the fall, and their window of cleanups is right now. So we've got a lot of options right now for people to get engaged. I also wanted to point out that this year, the data card for the International Coastal Cleanup has added PPEs. You see circled there, gloves and masks. So while we haven't had PPEs on in the past, it will help us get a grip on how big this issue is of people disposing of PPEs like in parking lots and such. And as far as getting the youth involved, as I mentioned with the Boy Scouts, I find this an interesting statistic. A poll of young Americans recently found that 71% of young Americans are more concerned about the environment than they are the economy. And I love the fact that 47% won't even date somebody who won't recycle. So I think that there's a lot of passion out there. And one of the great things about cleanups is that it's an effective way for everybody, but even youth who may not be able to drive, but they can go outside and pick up litter. So it's an effective way for them to make an immediate and tangible difference for their own environment. So that's just a real brief look at what some of the things we're doing. But the big takeaway this year is we still need to do the cleanups. There's still the need. People are still littering, but doing cleanups with more social distancing and the staggered start and the do-it-yourself, I think we'll actually maybe find at the end of this year an increase in the number of volunteers who have participated. To learn more about this year's cleanups, you can go to longwood.edu/cleanva. And at this point, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can open it up to any questions that people might have. Any thoughts or questions or anything that you did differently with your cleanups this year so far?
I have a quick question about how to track the number of bags. And this might be something that you were talking about earlier of it being a larger discussion, but I saw that you, in the presentation, that you track by the number of pounds. And how do you really quantify that? Because that's been something we've been struggling with. There's just so many different ways to calculate the pounds of bags. And you can't really get a true estimate unless you're putting it on a scale.
Right.
So how do you get your best guesstimate?
Yeah, and that's what it is a best guesstimate. Yeah, this has been an issue. Like sometimes we find volunteers, especially younger ones, will put about 8 pounds worth of debris in a bag. And if they're plastic bottles, that bag can actually get pretty full at 8 pounds because the volume of the plastic bottles is so large. And then they say, oh, we filled 70 bags, when in fact half the bags are half empty. And so we prefer the weight estimate as opposed to the bags. Some cleanups, though, only ask for how many bags were filled. It's a tricky number. We've also measured the weight of hundreds of bags, and we've discovered that most bags weigh somewhere between 13 and 15 pounds when volunteers stop wanting to carry them. So when we are told by volunteers, oh, we've filled 50 bags, and if they don't give us a weight, the best we can do is guesstimate, take that 50 bags and multiply it by about 14 pounds just to get an estimate. And actually, this is a big issue with CleanSwell, the online app for smartphones from Ocean Conservancy, is there are fewer items on the CleanSwell app. There were 19 and they just added a few, but it's not as robust as the data sheet, which has more items on it. And the CleanSwell app automatically estimates the weight based on what people typed in. So I found 100 cigarette butts and 4 bottles and 17 bottle caps that are plastic. And the CleanSwell app will say, all that adds up to 2 pounds. But what's not included on the app are things that we find that are heavy, like a bumper from a car that took 3 people to lift. That was about 90 pounds. So the CleanSwell app does, at the end, allow you to edit the weight. It will say, looks like you picked up 8 pounds worth, and you can go, oh my gosh, no, we got tires, we've got a refrigerator, we got all these things that add to the weight. But, I guess I should point out too, that the data collected by these volunteer cleanup events is considered a snapshot. It's good information, but it's not rigorously scientific. If you're going to do those kind of cleanups, there are protocols. NOAA's Marine Debris Program has a very rigorous protocol that is much more accurate because you're going to the same place with the same effort and the same distance month after month. So yeah, that is a kind of a downfall of citizen data, is it's not terribly accurate. However, I always say, if I take a snapshot of you in your living room, I can tell an awful lot about you. Fred's got a lot of books. You can tell a lot from a snapshot, but it's not the same as a thorough inventory. So I hope that helped a little bit, Emily.
Hey, Katie, this is Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I was just going to add just a little to that. We've been doing cleanups now for, more than a decade, and we have good data for all the cleanups that we've done. And we, for those that may be interested, we invested in a little scale. It's a hanging scale. It's a digital scale. It's really easy to use. It's literally $35 or $40. And all you have to do is have a tree nearby or anything that you can hang it from. And we actually weigh everything. So all of our data is actual weights of material, with the exception of the occasional car bumper or something like that, which we might have to estimate. But almost everything else we weigh, and it is an interesting feature to add to your cleanups if you're able to do it, and if you're organizing them on a regular basis. And the other thing I would say is, people like it too. They love to come back and see, because they're all guessing how much they've got, and then you can tell them exactly what they have. And so that's kind of interesting as well. The last thing I was going to say is we are doing a cleanup this weekend, and Katie, you covered most of the things that we're going through. We actually had to get our cleanup plan approved by the city of Virginia Beach because we were doing, quote, a group cleanup. But so normally we'd have over 100 people at our site. That's common, but we're going to have literally about 25 people, I think, and people are checking in at different times. And we actually, if you're coming in a group, it has to be a group of people that is like a family group or something. In other words, you're already hanging around together, so therefore, you still should wear a mask. They're still required to wear a mask when they're checking in with us, but other than that, they're outside and they can do what they wish. But that's if they're in a group that's already together. So anyway, we've had to jump through a few of those hoops as well. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. And we're going to we have a big area, and we have the area already mapped out in different sections, so we can send people to different areas, and we're going to see how it works out.
Yeah, that's a good point. It does take some pre-planning to say we can send 10 over here and 15 over there, not as one group of 15, but it does take some extra planning to make sure you can socially distance your volunteers. Yeah, Veronica.
With regards to Emily's question on weight, us in Prince William County under the district, when we do our cleanups, we have the neighborhood service that goes and picks the trash when it is staged. And they take it to the landfill where they send back the measurements. So that is how we take our measurements in Prince William County. This weekend, we just had the Ocoquan River cleanup by one of our partners, and we had over 50 volunteers at these challenging times, and they were located at different sites. And more as we are trying to get real plastic data, I had to initiate plastic data recording this time, but I left it a little bit open to volunteers who are willing to collect the data, because most often you find people who like to go out and just collect trash, but they don't have the time to record any data. And what I realized was that even though I had some volunteers who willingly said they were going to collect the plastic data, they ended up not doing that. And what they told me was that it was a little bit challenging for them to collect the data while picking up the trash. So my question, what I would like to learn from all those who've been collecting data, like plastic data, especially when they are on water, how do you go about that so I can help my volunteer?
You know, one of the things, and we run into this too, lots of volunteers love the data collection. Some of them think it just slows them down. So convincing them that there's a long-term benefit to the data usually helps a lot of people understand, why are we doing this? But lately what we've done is we'll send out like 2 people to walk the entire area and do nothing but data collection. They don't pick up a thing. They're just walking and collecting data of the area that's about to be cleaned. And then everyone else can clean as quickly as they want to. And I wish I had come up with that earlier, because it really is efficient and effective. You get the data. The other way that we've always recommended is that you work in groups of 4, 3 people picking up the data, calling it out to 1 person. But that means 1/4 of your volunteers is not picking up litter. So at any rate, that we have found that to be really effective. And Fred, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just was going to share, because we were novices at all this at the beginning, but we got, like I said, that AGU Tech's scientist who came. He's done cleanups all over the world. He's a rock star when it comes to trash. So he worked with us early on, and I would just second what you were just sharing. What we learned very quickly is that it was best to have certain people designated just to collect data. And I saw one of the pictures you shared where someone had a clipboard. We literally did the same. So we had our single data sheet. We kept our data sheet to 1 page, and I've got a copy of the one that he suggested we use. And then we had people designated to do that, and then each of the data collectors went around with the various groups, and so that works out well even during COVID distancing. You just make sure you have at least 1 data collector for each group, and then we get back at the end and then just tally up the sheets as sort of a separate activity. And it was all done. The data collection was done at the same time that the cleanup was done, and so everybody got to celebrate at the end together, and it was a good thing. So I just second all that you just said.
Thanks for sharing.
Yes, Dave.
I wanted to weigh in here a little bit, and I guess first of all I have to confess my sins, but we have been collecting, doing this trash cleanup for 10 years, and we have yet to record any data. Okay, so that's my confessional.
Mm-hmm.
But my defense is that I'd rather clean up a ton of trash undocumented than 200 pounds of trash and have it all categorized. So that having been said, we've worked with, starting last year, we had a dialogue with Fred and Shenandoah Green about doing just that, about getting somebody to go with us and help categorize the trash that we're picking up. This year is not a good year because of the virus, so we decided we opted not to do it this year. But my point is this: you have nice data there, but I question the accuracy, because how many more groups are there like ours who go out and collect trash that you don't know about. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
fair enough.
and it's not just not to disparage what you're doing, not meant to say that. I'm just saying that you're probably vastly underreporting what is actually being collected.
Yeah.
That's
I
all I'll
totally
say on that.
agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And as I mentioned earlier, we estimate 50 to 60% of our volunteer groups do collect data, which means right there, the International Coastal Cleanup is represented, is missing a good 40 or 50%. But I think in aggregate, given the large quantity of data we're getting, we can see trends and we can see local issues, which is a big part of what we're after. Yeah, any other thoughts or comments? It sounds like we need to probably have more discussion on the available databases, like the Clean Swell app and the website that's behind that anyone can go to, anyone in the world can go to and download data. And also the University of Georgia has an app, which is also very excellent. Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've just got another different thing to share. So after we did a few cleanups last year and then had the data, our city council at the time was very interested in the results of the whole visit by the scientists and everything we did. And we shared the data, and our data collection just locally ended up following the very charts that you showed, with cigarette butts being at the top and then the bags and all that. And interestingly enough, in part of our week with the scientists, one of the things we did was take a day-long tour of the landfill, and we discovered that they had erected big fences around all the areas where they were pounding trash into the ground, and then they move these fences around when they move the trash fill activity. And we asked them what those fences were, and they were erected specifically to collect plastic bags that are flying away during the whole landfill operation, and that costs a lot of money. And so we were able to share with our council the data that we had locally and showing that plastic bags were right up there at the top, and then link that directly to a cost that they're incurring right now, which is this extra fencing around the landfill, and how that could be mitigated by going. And so, like I said, we thought we were on the right path to do the plastic bag fee, but then we had a shift in our council. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. Yeah.
Great story, thank you. Oh.
Robin, I see a little hand thingy. Where did you find that?
I always tell people, because I'm a grad student, I've learned all this. So if you go to reactions or participants, I think it's participants. Hold on, let me do it. Yeah, if you go to participants down at the bottom, you can raise your hand. Beside you'll see you can do yes, no, go slower. So anyways, yes, so my question is more about things that they're going to find during my cleanup, like the COVID mask. So can anybody tell me that recently had a cleanup? Did you treat those things differently?
We did not. However, having said that, everyone wore a mask, everyone wore gloves, everyone had grabbers, so they weren't picking it up with their hand, they were picking it up with a grabber. And we just had them put it in the same bags that all the other trash was going into. And we ran that by our safety officer here at the university, and they said that that was adequate. We also, when all of the grabbers came back, we had them dipped into a bleach solution. And then we had alcohol spray that we used on the handles, even though people were wearing gloves, and, but still we were being extra careful. And then all of the gloves that we use are reusable. They went into a bin for washing. So, but we did not treat them as hazardous waste or anything like that. But I would not have people picking them up with bare hands, no.
So the gloves that you use, I don't know why, but all my supplies are coming from Adopt a Spot and Keep Norfolk Beautiful. I think they're just giving me one-use gloves. Is that not in keeping with what we're trying to do?
Yeah, we once gave out one-use gloves, single-use gloves, and we found they don't last very long. I mean, they're made to be on somebody's hands for a few minutes, not hours of picking up stuff, and especially, you know, if you're doing things like tires. Plus, we're basically not into single-use items. So that's why Clean Virginia Waterways shifted to reusable, washable gloves for that reason. And, you know, long-term, it might save money, but it's mostly about the right message, sending the right message. And in fact, Christina, when she does cleanups, they don't even use plastic bags to gather the trash. They use, was it from breweries or coffee shops?
Yeah, they're grain bags from some of the local breweries. So normally they would cut them, I think, horizontally. So if you ask them ahead of time that you know, need some bags for cleanup, they'll cut them at the top vertical part of the bag, or the shorter end of the bag, I guess. And they make great, I mean, all throughout that 4+ years of doing marine debris surveys, we probably went through a dozen of those bags. And, you know, they just last a really long time, and they're super strong. And what you can do if you are going to have, you know, pickup, or obviously sooner or later it all has to come together for disposal, then you can use the single-use plastic bags and really fill them up as far as you can fill them.
Yeah.
So you don't have all these like quarter-filled bags that are just going to waste.
Right. And something else that we've shifted to lately are 2-gallon buckets, blue buckets, just 2 gallons, 5 gallons too big and too heavy. And it's the same idea, is you'll send out your volunteers, they get their little bucket full or half full, and then they empty it into a trash bag so that the trash bags are full. The little buckets are also great for little kids, because, you know, if you get some 7 and 8-year-olds dragging a big old 30-gallon trash bag, it's going to snag on everything and or get torn open. So the buckets are great for cleanups. Maybe not water-based cleanups from canoes, but along land they really work well, and they last forever because they're made out of plastic, right? But they're not single use.
Christina, I might contact you since I'm planning this.
Not a problem. O'Connor's has been great, and a few others in the area. So, yeah. Veronica, did you have a question too? I saw the little hand.
Oh yeah, I did. What I wanted to add, oh, sorry about my background. What I wanted to add to the changes that have come with the COVID.
You know, a Zoom call is just not a Zoom call without a child or a dog. I mean, that makes the day right there for me. It's our future.
Okay, sorry about that. The little thing I wanted to add to Robin's question on the changes that COVID has brought is that during our cleanup this time, we encourage folks to work at sites of their desires. You know, it may be a stream in your backyard, just where you feel comfortable to clean up. And then for the supplies that we gave out, normally we usually get back the gloves to reuse, but we didn't this time around. And then we had to give out the disposable safety vest to the volunteers. And then for the grabbers that went out, I had to use Lysol to disinfect them. So I really encourage them not to go with the grabbers. If they could pick the trash with your gloves, that would be good. But for those who insisted on a grabber, I gave out grabbers. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other thoughts or sharing? Do you have to go, Mark? Okay, thank you, Mark. Yeah, we went a little over today, which is good for us to know in the future, not to be too ambitious. But our next call will be October the 3rd, Tuesday, unless we hear from any of you that that's a standing date that you could not make it. But we'll be looking at Tuesday, October 20th, 3 p.m. And the special topic will be looking at the Virginia legislative solutions to single-use plastics and plastic pollution. And please look in your emails for our next update. And if you have any updates you want us to put in our email to you, let us know. So once a month, we'll be sending out an email to everybody And if you've got a new resource or something that you want to share, we will put that in our once a month email. We're calling it the announcements for now. Any closing thoughts from anybody? And thank you for staying late.
I was just wondering if I could share a picture real quick, just to leave
Sure.
a smile on everybody's face, and it was kind of inspired by Veronica's kids.
Do
Is
I
it
have to?
possible for me to share a picture?
I think I have to. Hold on, I'm learning.
It's an education program that we came up with last year, and we do here in the Valley. But it's just a quick picture.
Fred, I'm going to make you a co-host right now.
Okay.
And then when you're the co-host, in the bottom center, there's a thing that says share screen.
Perfect.
You'll be able to click on that and share your photo.
So I don't know if everybody can see.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, great.
Okay, the picture to the left is, well, to the right, I had pulled up the data sheet. I was looking at that when we were talking about that. That's the data sheet we look. But the picture to the left, so if you can see that sculpture behind those kids on that wagon, that's the size of a juvenile whale, and it was inspired by the whale that washed up dead on the shore somewhere in the Far East. And they had gutted it and found out that it had died because of so much plastic in the stomach. And so VMI engineering department created this whale for us, and we take it around to the schools, and it's been a huge project. So the kids bring their single-use plastic that they've used, and they fill the whale up, and they're amazed how quickly the whale can fill up. And so you can imagine, so this whale travels to the schools each week to a different school. And anyway, I just love this picture. I never get tired of just looking at it.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that.
That's all.
Very good.
Any other closing thoughts or insights? And if not, you can always email to us afterwards.
May we have a copy of your slides?
Yes. Well, actually, the presentation I made will be on YouTube.
Okay.
But yes, I'm happy to share my PowerPoint as well. If you
Very
want to
good.
do your own PowerPoint and use those, yes.
The data was good, particularly.